I have a problem within my organization. And that problem is related to the fact that I want certain devices to always have the same IP address. Now, I could statically define the addresses on those devices. However, I'm running DHCP within the organization. Specifically right now, DSW1 is a DHCP server, and it's handing out IP addresses to those stations in VLAN 10. However, PC1, I need it to have an IP address of 10.1.1.10/26. And right now, that's not the IP address that it's receiving. If we look at the output of ipconfig on PC1, we'll see that it's receiving the IP address of 10.1.1.34. And if we go back to DSW1, using the command show IP DHCP binding, we can confirm that 10.1.1.34 is being handed out to the device with this particular client ID. So this client ID is being sent to the DHCP server by the PC. This is how it's being represented in the world of DHCP. So what we can do is we can do a reservation. We can state that based on this client ID, we are going to give out a certain IP address each and every single time to that particular device. So in this case, I want to hand out 10.1.1.10 to the device with this client ID, and this client ID is PC1's client ID. So right now, if we look at the output of show IP DHCP pool, on DSW1, we'll see that we have a pool created called VLAN10_pool, and it's giving out IP addresses in this particular range, but 30 of them are excluded. How can we see the excluded addresses? Well, we can type in show run pipe to section DHCP, and we can see the excluded addresses are 10.1.1.0 through 10.1.1.30. So they're excluded right now, but what I need to do is I need to take that 10.1.1.10 address and associate it specifically with PC1's client ID. And to do this, I have to create a new pool. I have to create a new pool specifically for that client as an example. So we'll say configure terminal, IP DHCP pool, and we're going to call this PC1. And I need to map the client ID to the IP address I'm going to give out to it. So what was the client ID we saw up above? It was this right here. So let me grab that. And what we're going to do is we're going to type in client identifier. And then the client identifier is this. And now what we need to do is we need to define the IP address that it's going to receive. And we're going to use the host command. Host, and the IP address that we're giving out is 10.1.1.10, 255.255.255.192. Notice what it says. There's already a binding that exists for the device with this client ID. Look at the output of do show IP DHCP binding. Oh yeah, there it is. So let's clear the binding table. The command to do that would be clear IP DHCP binding, and I want to clear all of them, so I put a star there. Now if we look at the output of show IP DHCP binding, it's empty. So now let's re-add that host command, 10.1.1.10, 255.255.255.192. We hit enter, and it accepts it this time. So let's look at our DHCP bindings now, show IP DHCP binding, and now notice that this particular client ID is always going to get 10.1.1.10, and it never expires. And it's a manual type of IP addressing that is going on here. So if we go back now to PC1 and we execute ipconfig, we'll see that the IP address is still 10.1.1.34. What we need to do is we need to issue a DHCP renew command. So, ipconfig's renew command. That's what we need to type in. Let's do that. A little bit of error messages because I have different virtual adapters on this particular device. That's not a problem. It's not going to interfere with what we're trying to do. So we'll scroll back up here and notice it just received the IP address of 10.1.1.10, and it's going to get it every single time. If we go back to DSW1, we look at the output of show IP DHCP bindings, there it is. It's always going to be there. It's not going to go away. So this is a way that we can manually define which IP address will be given to which client each and every single time. And we can do this for many different devices in our organization. This might be something you want to do with a server in a particular VLAN that you never want to have its IP address change, or potentially some device, some application, some service you have running where it always needs the same IP address. If it ever changes, then it breaks. Well, you can manually assign them here so that they are always receiving the same IP address based on that client identifier.